Oh, okay.
Hi, Dave.
Oh, Diana's here, she'll help. Couldn't remember what we talked about last week. All things work.
All things work together for the good of those who are called.
Okay. So the question shall be, until it is, do we really believe that all things work together for good to those who love the Lord? Romans 8:28, I believe, an article called According to Its Purpose, His Purpose, Its Purpose. Do we really, really believe that?
When is convenient?
That was part of what we concluded last week. And what we said was we got to get past the convenience part, because if we really believe that, then we can really begin to act on that and act like that. But we had lots of discussion about the convenience part and how in certain things we can do things. But it's not easy. It's not easy because of this resistance that we've gotta have in all of our decision making. We talked about a little bit about free will. We talked a little bit about, this is all I got from last week.
Yeah, because there was really a lot of soul searching.
Yeah, and people gave specific examples of things that they've been experiencing and working through. So, do we really believe? Do we really, really believe?
That actually coincides with something that we were talking about earlier. We were talking about the retrogressive election of Obama in relationship to spiritual progress.
Oh, the retrogression, the retrogression.
The retrogressive policy, the retrogressive election of Obama in his relationship to spiritual progress.
Oh wow! To whose spiritual progress? How is
It's
it?
retrogressive because it brought back and forth retrogressive policies.
Progressive policy.
Yes, so the policies became retrogressive again, and and I was trying to convince Nick and Sheldon to write about it, but I did not get a positive response from either one. So
I'll put it in my notes, I got a list of things I should do with.
and mine is probably at the bottom, but anyway, that's one of the things that we were talking about, and. If all things work together for good of those who love the Lord, those who are called according to the purpose, then that in itself says that regardless of how we view things, nothing is actually negative, it's an opportunity.
Exactly.
Or it's an assignment, so. But,
Or it's part of the experience that we have to have on the journey.
right.
So that's a bigger question then. I mean, we talked about, I think, we started with the question that we asked several weeks ago. What was that question several weeks ago? Do we really believe that what we do here in this realm affects the next word? Does it reverberate? Does it affect it? And so if we believe what we do affects the next realm, then the next thing we talked, subsequently last week we talked about, then do we believe that all things that work together, all things work together for good? Meaning those things which are, all things that we don't have direct control over as well. Those things that happen to us, around us. If we believe that what we do, how we respond, how we deal with things, right now affects the next, it reverberates in the next realm, then do we believe that those things that we don't directly control still relate to how we choose to respond, and that affects the next realm? That's sort of convoluted, but it all says the same thing.
I think that it's virtually impossible for us to actually believe it without having gotten to a place where life and livelihood doesn't matter. Because the basic instinct of the human is life and livelihood. Preserve your life and make sure you have livelihood. The most dangerous person, either politically to face or to face from a spiritual perspective, is the one who is not concerned about life and livelihood, but more concerned about the outcome of humanity. And as individuals, I think that
So why is that person more dangerous to follow what you just said? He's
because
concerned about manhood, of mankind, and not self.
because that person will put anything on the line to make sure that there is a progression, a spiritual progression for mankind, or in other cases, a political progression. For example, if it had not been for those of us who did not care about or were not concerned about life and livelihood, there never would have been a civil rights bill. Martin Luther King never would have been successful in pushing for a civil rights bill if it had not been for those groups who said, we're going to do it by any means necessary.
And dangerous to whom?
Dangerous to the powers that be.
Okay.
And what happened, they found it easier to deal with him than to deal with those who were willing to put it all on the line. If they had only to deal with him, then they would have drugged this thing out until people lost their interest. But to see how radical students had become, and the younger people were saying, we don't care whether we get a degree or not, it doesn't matter. If we have to die fighting for the cause that we believe in, you're not going to shoot at me and I don't shoot back. You're not going to spit on me and I don't fight back. That's not going to happen. So they found it easier to deal with him, and as a result of that, you end up with a civil rights bill. Now, if you look at that from a spiritual perspective, what happens is that the system has been revamped so that it keeps you 1 week from bankruptcy. You know, you're one paycheck away from bankruptcy, you're one paycheck away from homelessness. And if you get to the place where it matters not, what only matters to me is not only realizing who I am as a spiritual entity, but how do I move beyond this material world and exercise the spiritual essence of my being. When you get to that place, then the whole idea of homelessness, the idea of bankruptcy, those things don't matter anymore. Why? Seek ye first the kingdom of God and His righteousness, and all this other stuff will be added. When you begin to buy into that, then everything begins to change. In relationship to you anyway. And that becomes a threat to people who don't want it to change. We were talking earlier when we were making reference to this retrogressive thing about the election, how one of the questions that was raised was, okay, how is it that you can see a whole campaign of based on lies, and the lies are provable, and you know they're lies, but yet you find the churches or the quote-unquote Christians supporting these efforts. They're voting for this constantly. So what does that say about what you believe? Either you believe that Christianity is a lie, or you're lying to yourself about what truth is, or both. You see? But when you come to a place where you begin to accept, you begin to realize that truth in this realm is just as important as truth from the other realm. Now, all of a sudden, not only do you question the veracity of what's taking place around you, but you also begin to question what you have believed and what you have supported in relationship to what you say you believe. And
that's the soul searching part that I think you were talking about too. Well, it looks like the question has to be answered by us individually so that we can then affect mankind. So it looks like there's still going to be some soul searching for all of us. I haven't told Audrey this, but my sister-in-law has days to live. And you know, the stuff that's been going around in my head about all of that, I've got to make peace with that too. And this is the sister-in-law who lost her husband a year ago, last part of March, cancer. So, Romans 8:28, I believe that everything, all things, not some things, not that thing, not this thing, but anything, all things work together for good. Everything has has a purpose. And if that purpose is to push us more toward this internal questioning of self, because the Creator already knows the answer as it relates to us in terms of, I mean, it created us. We got to know the answer. We talked about the Chinese child that was adopted, and how, you know, it laid on his back so long that when it was adopted, the parents tried to put it in another position, and it just screamed its little heart out as if it were in pain. But it was moved from what it knew. Mm-hmm. And again, they tell you, you know, the back of his head has started getting flat because of that position so long. And so, how are we like that child? Because when they took the child to the doctor said, "That's okay. Keep turning it. Keep turning it. She's going to do what a child is supposed to do." So the issue is, are we going to do what spiritual beings are supposed to do?
Can we scream?
That's after you kick and scream.
Yeah.
That's getting through the kicking and screaming.
When you turn us, we scream. Turning us is facing adversity.
Yes.
Why me? It's screaming.
Yes.
I'm tired of this. It's screaming. You know. Mm-hmm. So how long will we knowingly kick and scream? The baby was kicking and screaming because it knew nothing else. We know better, yet we still kick and scream.
But what we did say was that we may not kick and scream as long as we did a year ago, or as long as we did the year before. I mean, we wallow in that misery of, why me? But it may not be as long as, one day we're not going to have that. We're not even going to ask the question. So, oh, okay. But right now, that's where we are on the journey, most of us. So.
Yeah, I was just going to say that I've been talking to Pastor Richard anyway, or just let him know that I wanted to come down at some point, maybe over the summer, and teach about that specifically, or at least share my thoughts about what I've been dealing with, because what I want to help us do is see how to recognize those moments when we begin to kick and scream, and learn how to quiet that and use those situations for the purpose that we experience them, which is to help us evolve ourselves spiritually. And I want to lay a groundwork for how you recognize that, and how what you do in those situations to sort of bring you back to the place where you can hear capital H and then respond in a way that is appropriate, as opposed to kicking and screaming egotistically.
So you're going to fast forward us, show us how to fast forward through that.
There's no fast forward button.
Hey.
But just like when we used to, when you go in the ocean, to get through you can't go straight into the wave that's breaking over you. You have to go under. So you let it roll over you, and then you learn something as a result of that. But you have to focus in that moment and know where to go, in terms of where you place yourself, in terms of what experience you engage, in order to get through it. And then while you're engaging what you should be engaging, as that is going around and rolling on top of you, you grow closer and you grow stronger in your connection to the very thing that shows you that all of this is not real.
So you actually die as a human. Because when the wave goes over you, under the wave, you're holding your breath.
Mhm.
So you actually, it's a death that has to transpire before that new life can be experienced.
Yep. It's just something related to that I always thought was like something that give you that kick that you need to hear is essentially what we have to do is recognize those instances where we are given opportunities to overcome our ego, because if we don't kill it, it will kill us.
I think it does kill us. We die 1,000 deaths. When we die those 1,000 deaths, our phone call to someone to what we call encouragement, actually it's a resurrection. So it brings us back. But I want to harken back to something that Barbara said earlier, where she was talking about system, right?
Mhm.
What is the purpose of sympathy? Why is it we know what we know, but we feel we still experience it? And at one point, I thought it was something that to keep us cognizant of the inevitability of death, right? Of our transition. But I think it's deeper than that now. I think that the purpose of sympathy is to remind us of our limited awareness of who we actually are. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it says you're not all that and you're not as far along.
Right.
I think.
And I don't think that we ever get to the place where we don't experience sympathy, because if we don't experience sympathy, it's also difficult to experience empathy.
Mhm.
And without empathy, we don't reach out to humanity the way we should. And I think a classic example of that is the experience that Jesus had when he looked at Israel, how I would like to gather you under my wings and wept, and how the experience that he had with Lazarus, those things help us to recognize sympathy for what it is, but at the same time, realizing you never get beyond it, because it is an eternal thing for the human.
Mhm. It's part of the human experience in a
Right.
sense.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Why, is this question premature, or is this question something that we need to be continually asking ourselves?
Of course.
What question was that?
Romans 8:28.
Oh.
Do we really believe Romans 8:28 is the question?
It's like a guidepost. It's a reminder of asking yourself. I think it's something posed to us, asking ourselves more so than my asking a Janice or asking a group of people, you know, so that we can kind of check our spiritual compass.
So the issue is then, I believe it works together if I let it work together for good.
Absolutely.
That's, if I allow it to work together for my good.
Yeah, because that's what I was saying, not only that, we in these, we're programmed,
I
we
got you,
program
Sean.
ourselves to believe that, okay, it's also in trying to help God work it out too, because it's like, you know, truly believe, and this is the way we discussed it last week, because we also have this thing, well, to work out the way we wanted to work it out, so also, okay, and it goes back to the comfort zone thing. I was talking to someone about that last week. We have so many comfort zones, and so when stuff starts peeling off, layers are being removed, and if it draws us out of our various comfort zones,
Just like the baby on the back,
Yeah.
that's the comfort zone.
then with my preconceived ideas, how do I see this working out? Because the bottom line, it says his purpose is not my purpose.
Mhm.
Because we get lost in what we say God's purpose is. what my purpose is for my Lord, for my life, what the Lord purpose is for me. But it works out the way He wants it. And with our eyes, we can't see it as this can't be God. But it's not going to work out the way we think it should. Because the bottom line is the way His purpose, not our purpose.
And when we get to the point where we are much more mature spiritually, its purpose is our purpose.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the kicking and screaming is less. I
Right,
got a
right,
surprise
because
call
it's-
from
yeah.
Sheldon yesterday, and both of us were talking. It shocked the daylights out of me. But we were talking about kind of like being in situations and you just numb. I mean, whereas maybe if it happened to you a while back, you would. But it's just like, okay, you just flown with it and you just numb to how you probably would have or someone else would respond to it. You just numb and you just like, okay, if it works out, it work out. If it doesn't flow that way, it doesn't flow that way.
You know, it's like saying, you're like, I don't know why, but I'm calm about this.
Yeah.
You know,
Just ride the wave.
and we say that,
It's like the Haiti thing to us as a body. I mean, the pain was there, but it didn't rock me.
yeah, you're right. And if we ask ourselves, yeah, I'm calm about it, but we're waiting on another shoe to drop. So you're like, why am I calm about it? And then I was like, oh, you sure you're okay? Yeah, you're okay because you're supposed to be okay. And when you talk about our discomfort, Bob, it's we don't get beyond our discomfort until we begin to say who we are. Last week when we were there in Philly, Sheldon came down. Sometimes I think he just came down to agitate me to death, but, but anyway, he came.
No, all things.
All things.
Even Sheldon, right?
Even Sheldon.
Yeah, and I was wishing for Nick to be a counterbalance to it, however he had to work. But anyway.
Sheldon is a messenger from the Creator, sent to deliver the lesson.
we were sitting there, and we were in a session, and I'm hoping that some of the people who were there are if not listening now, we'll see the broadcast later. And one of the things that was being said was, God allowed me, or the God in me. You remember that, Sheldon? And my response to that at the end of the discussion was that it's not the God that's in you. It's not the God that allowed you. You are the God who did it. Either you're Elohim or you're not. So Elohim is not in you. That's who you are. Now, we are very uncomfortable with that.
Yeah.
And that's part of the kick and screaming. We are very uncomfortable with it because, keep in mind, the bulk of us, with the exception of Nicholas, of course, grew up in church, or at the very least around it, and we were so indoctrinated with, you're not God, you cannot possibly, you see what I'm talking about? So that brings that discomfort. My question would be to that is, how quickly, how much faster will we move forward? Is our accepting that to the extent that we say it with ease, could that possibly be the fast forward button that you were mentioning earlier? Could that possibly be it? That moving us beyond that discomfort of saying, instead of the God that's within me, the God that because I am God, I can do this. That's why.
What are you saying it to self until self, whatever self is, begins to take
to accept it. Kabbalah.
I thought
To take on the very qualities that you wish. What was I just about to say? To take on the very qualities of the God you wish would take the problem away from you.
Yeah, because I think the only way that we succumb to these particular situations is when we feel like we're not in control, or that situation has gotten the best of us, so now we have to try to control it, or we get agitated. Well, basically we get agitated because we don't believe we can control it. And so we don't believe that good is going to come out of you. You're going to be essentially, whatever comes in this situation, I'm going to be good regardless. So I think at times we have, all of us have grown in that aspect. So things that normally would have gotten to us, we wouldn't have been in control of, and it would have bothered us, and it no longer does that. It shows the difference. It shows the progress in that area. And then when we fail to do that, that also shows that we have not grown out. Well, that is like a measuring, a barometer of how we need to keep on going, or we have further to go. I think it has to do with us in who we truly are. I think that's what it comes down to.
I can see that. Also, I believe that I was speaking earlier while we were broadcasting our recording about my how exhausted my body is, and if I were very comfortable, I believe, with the idea of I am Elohim, then that gives me greater access to the ability to rest this thing without having to revert to some other place to do it. You know, or to
Or the rest automatically becomes what it is
yeah,
based on the word.
right.
I'm rested.
As
And it-
opposed to the other part of it, you know. 'Cause I don't fall asleep when I sit there. I don't. That's just not me. And the other day I did it.
You did it?
Yeah, and then I tell you what's more funny than that. I saw it to Georgia a couple of days ago, and I just remember, it might be yesterday, I don't know. I was talking to him, he says, several times in the conversation, you really need to get some rest. And I'm thinking, really? What about you?
And then I hope this is George.
Yeah. I was thinking about that, yeah. And then it dawned on me, if George is telling you more than one time in the same conversation, you need to get some rest, something wrong. You need to get some rest. But that, I believe that all of these things that affect us as humans, you know, all of these things that we are cognizant of in this physical realm begins to become not less important, but less of an issue. The more accepting we are that we are Elohim, not just in thought, not just in voice, but also in action. And even with that, think about how difficult it was in the beginning to become accepting of Jesus being married. You know, now it's just a comfortable thing. But it did not become comfortable because we thought it individually, but it became comfortable because we talked about it collectively. And as we talked about it collectively, we became more comfortable with it, to the extent that now, I'll say it beyond the confines of these walls, because I'm very comfortable with what it actually is.
The Living Bible reads this way about Romans 8:28, and we know that all that happens to us is working for our good if we love God and are fitting into His plan. And that may not, just because I'm reading translation doesn't necessarily mean that's the best interpretation of what that really says. But words like happen, words like His plan, then sparks the other questions. Are my plans as Elohim the plans of the Creator? Are they one?
That's what I was thinking, because more often it's not that way. It's not. We allow ourselves to be fitted into God's plan. We try to fit God into our plan.
Mm-hmm. We're still trying to be our own God in a sense.
And it has to be, because until that happens, we're not one.
Mm-hmm.
We're not one with the Creator. We're not one with the Father until that happens. Because one is the same. Not superior, not inferior, but the same.
I think we are I mean, I agree that we are trying to be our own God, because just scanning back over this chapter,
Yeah.
it's almost as if first, who wrote this, Paul?
Paul,
But anyway, it's almost as if he's reminding them and trying to convince them before he gets to this verse about all things working together. Because he's saying first, you got to believe that once you become Elohim, or you live as Elohim, there's no condemnation now. So do we believe that?
think about that.
And then
Before
fact
you
that-
do that, let me do
Go ahead.
this. Think about that. He did not say condemnation with a caveat. He said no condemnation, period. You know, but we always add a caveat, no condemnation except for. So you know, I think we need to digest, understand that there are no exceptions to it.
What's the verse for there's now therefore no condemnation to those in Christ Jesus?
first
First of Romans
8:1.
8:1.
And then in verse 2, he says, you've been set free from all that stuff. Once you try to live as Elohim, you've been set free for all that stuff. And then down in 9, he talks about you are the spirit now. You are a spirit. You're living a spirit. So do we believe that?
Mm.
And going on, he's saying we've received not the spirit of slavery to corruption, but a spirit that set us free from corruption. So do we believe that? So there's a lot of things to wrap our heads around in order to get to the place where we can say, yes, all things work together for our good.
But verse 1 then takes you back to the previous chapter, which talks about, the law and to what extent the law was good for you, but at a certain point, you are the spirit.
Yeah, when you come into the fact that you are Elohim, then you've been set free from that law. And you're no longer a slave to that kind of corruption. Because in the law, you can go this way or that way.
The law sets
Depending
boundaries
on what's
for you.
happening around you, depending on who says what, depending on whatever.
Gotcha, Steve. I think once we said the law set boundaries for us until we figure out who it is we really are.
That's why Yeshua said, I came to fulfill it, not to abolish it. Because he knew everybody didn't understand it anyway.
Yeah, it serves a purpose.
Suppose for a moment that you told someone, let's say that Audrey tells Evelyn, I'm here to teach you how to drive this car. And I'm going to fulfill the principle of driving this car with you. And then she goes through all the steps and lays everything out, and then she leaves. Now, Evelyn begins to tell Janice, couldn't nobody drive a car except Audrey. We got to stay in this wagon, or we have to have mobility by virtue of walking. Because Audrey is the only one who drives this car. We can't drive this car until we get to Spartanburg, or Spartanburg represents heaven. How much?
How do we get to Spartanburg?
Yeah. It's, but how much? How disrespectful is that to what Audrey came to do? How?
And does that not call what Audrey said a lie?
Yeah. Now take that and relate it to Jesus. So how much of a lie are we accusing him of telling when we say we can't do it?
Ouch.
Which says that post-Constantine Christianity not only is based on the lie, but it perpetuates it.
Okay, the law served its purpose. Shake it off.
I mean, it's something to think about, isn't it?
Yeah.
And that's also related to why Yeshua said the letter kills, but the spirit brings life.
Yeah.
You can't. If you read the Bible literally, of course, you're gonna go crazy. So you have to step away from that to even begin to understand, because it's not it you're trying to understand; it's you, and it is a reflection of something that's inside of you. It's something that you are, and it's until we begin to have that attitude, and stop kicking and screaming. Or at least learn that we are the cause of a lot of the kicking and screaming that we go through. We can't even really approach what that is. And I'm speaking, of course, about Christianity in general, because I feel like in here we already understand this. But it's one thing to understand it, and it's another, understand it as much as we can. It's another thing to do it. And they're related, but that's part of what I feel like is our responsibility to actually begin doing. And not that we haven't begun doing it, but you get what I'm saying.
Yeah.
And maybe doing it to a greater degree by virtue of understanding it as opposed to having an academic walk through it.
Yeah.
And verse 7, chapter 7 reminds us of this, this wrestling with the law of God versus and following that versus following the carnal law of my body, and that's when we ask that question, do we really believe all things work together? It's having gone through all of that wrestling and then coming to the conclusion, yes, I do. Or coming to the conclusion, not yet, I don't, or I don't quite yet believe it. Because if I did yet believe it, as you say, I would act on it. I would act like I believe it. So that's why Paul got to the question, there is now therefore, when he says, he said, "Oh wretched man I am, who shall deliver me from this body, from the body of this death?" And then he says, "I thank God for Christ, the Messiah, for Savior, for deliverance. That with one mind I serve the Lord, and with the flesh the law of sin." But then the next verse in verse 6 says, "There is now therefore." It says, all you guys get over it. You don't have to keep condemning yourself like this. You don't have to keep putting your own foot on your own neck, if that's possible.
But it's easy to tell someone that, but when you having a moment, for some reason it's hard for you it's hard for you not to live what you just told
That's
the
why.
next person,
Hey.
It's just, and I don't know why it's like that with us.
But that's the point. The point is we got to get to that point ourselves, so that when we really tell somebody that, it just doesn't flow off our lips. It's easy to tell somebody that.
Mm-hmm.
We're speaking from experience, and then the resonance in them picks up on the fact that we're genuine about this.
While we're talking about that, maybe that's us being in the mode of being a savior by telling them, okay, you can do this thing. And I guess when they come to me, they delivering me from myself. Evelyn, you can do this thing, you know what I'm saying? So
They're
that's
giving
what,
you opportunity to
Exactly.
act on what it is you thought you knew.
yeah, so I see the role of us being, in that role, we're a savior at the time. Telling this person,
That's what I'm talking
you
about.
can do this, you know,
You're not a savior at the time.
you're our
You're
savior.
always a savior.
Okay,
You see,
Yeah.
that's the thing, Messiah, we always look at Messiah as being separate from us. You know, when that is actually who we are. That goes back to Audrey teaching you to drive the car thing.
mm-hmm,
You see, you're always what she told you you are. You're a driver.
okay.
And whether you ever drive the car or not, that's who you are.
And so this is, the creator saying, she's a reminder, but she's a reflection of you letting you know,
Yes.
you can do this.
Yeah,
You know?
the Father says, I gotta send somebody in the earth who looks like you, who acts like you, who does what you do, whose survival is based on your survival as a human,
Right,
who experience the same human things that you experience, but we have not a perpetuator who has not experienced the same temptation that we have. Go through the same things in order for you to be able to understand you can do this stuff
right,
because this is who you are.
right.
You see?
Mm-hmm.
So it's not, and I think Evelyn, when we get to those places where you say that it's thank you, dear. Well, it's fine until we get ready to experience it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then we have a problem with it. The reason we have those we are faced with those things is because it's an assignment for us to bring light, not just to mankind, but to ourselves as well.
Mm-hmm.
And the more you do that, the less of those things, not the less you face, but the less you recognize because you deal with them so quickly until they're gone. And that goes back to Archie's thing about condemnation. If you recognize who you are and you understand that there is no condemnation, then you don't beat yourself up.
So what is it then if, say, Audrey comes and tell me, Evelyn, you can do this thing, and okay, Audrey tells me, Evelyn, you can do this thing, and I hear her, and then another person, and I'm still in this rut, right? But then another person comes, and they say the same thing Audrey's saying, but that particular person, what is it that makes that particular person, me hear that particular person? Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, she planted the seed, the other person watered.
Okay. Okay,
Got it?
yes.
My niece, last August, my niece's daughter, we were in a beauty shop or something. Why do you call it a beauty shop?
Make it pretty.
Oh, does?
Yeah, I don't know.
That's a thought.
Anyway, we were there, and the baby kept standing, but wouldn't move. And she said, "Oh gosh, I wonder when that baby." I said, "That baby can walk. She just has to know she can walk.
Mm.
She can get up. She can balance. She can sit down and get right back up. She can walk. She has to know she can walk. And this all is us having to know who we are and that we can do what we need to do. And that has to happen personally before that baby has to walk and know that she can walk before she can walk over and take somebody else's hand and help them balance and then walk.
That's the same principle as far as us being healed, right? I got to know that I'm healed.
And you gotta understand, and the question is how you understand what heal is too. And is the heal that is the way you define it, the way the Creator defines it for you?
Are you asking me a question?
And no. I'm being rhetorical, and I'm thinking about ways that people say you're healed, but you ain't got enough faith in everything, all that stuff.
Yeah.
All that stuff. Stuff that comes off our lips again so easily.
Yeah.
And nobody really thinks about what they're saying, because if they did, they would be acting on it. If they believed it, they would be acting on it. And I'm not talking about us necessarily, I'm talking about us and in general.
And you know, and the reason why I say that, because here I go again. This is my second sister with cancer. And when we were coming from Beaufort, I got the call that the cancer has come back.
Mm-hmm.
And I was crying, I was hurt, because I'm like, okay, here I go again, God, the same issue.
Mm-hmm.
But then when I talked to my sister, she's fine. So I guess this is God telling me, you know what?
Chill out.
Yeah.
It's your problem dealing
Yeah.
with it. It's your sister's problem if she's.
I done blew my nose, crying, snotting, whatever. And then when I talk to her, she's fine. She cleaning the house and everything. So I guess this is truly life lessons. I'm keep repeating these same things, till whatever. Period.
Question of the day, do we really believe that all things work together for good? What is the good?
Yeah, that's the point.
What is good? What does that mean?
Sheldon will tell you, man, God, I know you researched. Nick looking down, he researched.
Oh!
Good. Were you going, Nick?
Oh no, the word itself mean?
No, I mean
In that particular.
in connection with what we're talking about.
Oh, I see.
So the good is, I don't want to use the word collective. Good is when we say seek ye first the kingdom of God. And when you seek ye first the kingdom of God is essentially all Elohim, one but many. The good is almost like, I'm trying to find the words to explain it. It's doing the will of the Father. That what the Father would have. That's what the good is. So it's not the gods, the single gods that we think we are, that we like to walk around and think we are, but we are doing the good for I don't want to say the collective because I don't want it to make it sound like it's a human being type thing, but the cosmos, God, the all. You're working in that flow. That's what you're doing good for. Nick and JR, anyone else can pick up anytime because I know y'all know what I'm saying.
Yeah, benefit. Benefit.
Yeah.
But how that verse has been interpreted through the years is, okay, good as it relates to my physical being.
Oh no, absolutely.
Which is
not.
a whole,
No, it's not
but
that.
that's the way we've interpreted through the
Yes.
years. It worked
Yes.
out on my behalf. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's why we get annoyed when stuff doesn't go our way, because we think the Creator's intention and plan means we get to feel comfortable all the time.
Yeah.
When in fact it's the exact
Yeah.
opposite. 'Cause
And really, Nick, when you think about it, I think a piece I wrote the other week is that if you really think about that, all the Creator's saying is that you find peace in your pain. Regardless. You see what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
So what we interpret or translate or experience as feeling good all the time is wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, think about this.
Because we are feeling good all the time.
If we were to always have this ideal feeling of what we thought that good actually, what we thought that good actually used to mean, think about how much progress we would have not made if we had everything to go directly how we wanted it.
Yep.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
We wouldn't be any closer to knowing who we are. We really are.
We would be a complete mess.
yeah.
So that's why we're a complete mess.
Well, we might be a mess now. Might be a mess.
Okay, we're an incomplete mess. How about that?
But I believe, though, that part of the mess of it is how this has been interpreted and how we've come to understand it and believe it in the past until we knew better. And lots of people still interpret this as it relates to this physical realm and haven't gotten to the spiritual understanding of who they are and then applying this verse spiritually to themselves.
Yeah, I think that it also deals with your pursuit, and what you're pursuing determines what you view as good. However, what determines your pursuit is the degree of what you realize you are.
Yeah, I agree with that.
I had to catch. He went around the barn, so I had to meet him on the other side. Okay. And Nick even had a delayed. Yeah, I agree with that.
Okay, so your pursuit is
I'll help you.
Yeah, go ahead.
Please help him.
Well, they need it now. Because of my lack of ability to communicate.
We complete each other.
Oh.
Oh, and what a politician, JR. You see that?
Yeah, I see that, yeah, I see that.
Go ahead.
So what he was saying is it's kind of like what you put into it, that's what you get out of it. And you have to, I was just telling Mr. Richard this the other day, you have to be willing to face hell and put yourself through hell. Regardless of whatever religion or spiritual background you come from, if you want to understand what is real. And so, with respect to the Bible, you have to step away from everything you've been told, even because it does conflict with your spirit, which is why it's confusing. And you have to be willing to accept the possibility that you might be going to hell because you are not listening to the dude talking to you, in church. Then, when you become willing to face that, or at least the fear of that, then you can realize that the dude talking to you in church is not saying anything that you couldn't. But why is there a discrepancy between what I'm reading and what I'm hearing, or all that stuff? So does that help?
Yeah, what you put into it is what you get out of it. And if you put only the physical aspects of your pursuits, that's what you're going to get out of it. Short-lived, but if you put in from a spiritual perspective, the pursuit of understanding even more that you are Elohim.
If you bring your spirit to it, it'll show you the spirit hidden in it.
If you say one more time.
If you bring your spirit to it, it'll show you. It will reveal to you the spirit hidden in it.
And it refers to the experience, the what?
I was talking about, the study that you go through when you read the Bible, the experiences that you go through that are uncomfortable, and also it refers to the higher self that you are, that you don't yet know you are, that is trying to help you undo all the confusion and stuff that we have gotten caught up in.
I think my problem is, and I'm only going to speak for me, is I don't like seeing the dirt, the mess that I have.
What's everybody from?
I just don't like to see the mess, the confusion, I'll say.
Do something about it.
Yeah,
Because if you don't see it, you can't change it.
true.
So do something about it. It's like, again, I go back to everything that happens in your life that you consider mess, darkness, negative, whatever, is actually an assignment. And the greater your desire to accept who you are, the more assignments are going to come your way. And we see it, I began to catch hell the moment that I started believing this and accepting this, right? You can catch hell. What Nick is described as going through hell, it's an assignment. You can't change hell if you don't go through hell.
True.
How many of us follow that's this way to hell?
But we laugh, but that's a great point. Because when we go to church, the church say avoid hell, but it actually carrying you straight to hell and leaving you there. Because you go in there and say, well, it must be something you did wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah, you brought this on yourself by virtue of not tithing. You brought this on yourself because last week you didn't come to church. You went on vacation and didn't bring a bulletin back. I mean, as opposed to recognizing, well, yeah, you're doing this on behalf of mankind. That's a whole different approach to it. And it actually should change the way you think about it.
Yeah, it seems like it frees you.
It does.
It frees you if you let yourself be free.
Yeah, but if you say you going to hell because you went on vacation and didn't bring a bulletin back, that puts you in more further in bondage. But the minute he says, you go on to hell, you go to hell, and look what happens.
No, but I bought a bulletin back. It just happened to be a bulletin from this mosque that I went to. You still going to hell?
Oh yeah, that's another layer. That's
You definitely going
You
to
know you're doing that.
So yeah, and we could follow that to the ridiculousness of
Yes.
it.
You're
And
right.
that's the way we live. That's the way people live.
Mm-hmm.
And not to forget, that's where we live.
Yeah.
That's how we live. Except, of course, Nick. I have to always add that.
I in my own way, I know what to say. Might be dealing with slightly different, experiences and subject matter, but it's the same thing. I want to just throw this in randomly. Christianity is one of the only religions on the face of the earth that says you go to hell forever.
Yep.
Not even Islam says that.
It's not one, it's the only. Actually, that's why Islam wrong. Because it doesn't say what Christians say it's supposed to say. Anyway.
But once we get past verse 28, we can really, really accept verse 29.
What's 29?
Talks about whom he did foreknow, meaning the Creator. He also did predestinate to be conformed to the image of the Son, the image of the for lack of a better, the mentor, the image of the Creator. Bottom line, because the Son said that I am the Creator one.
So what does it say again?
So I'll read it. For whom he did foreknow, he also did predestinate to be conformed to the image of his Son, that he might be the firstborn among many brethren. So verse 28 says, and we know that all things work together, blah, 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 according to them who are called according to his purpose. For whom he did foreknow, he also did predestinate. In other words, if we were the foreknown, then we are saviors.
Okay.
Conforming to the image of the one that came as the Son, as the Savior. We are saviors.
And what's that word firstborn means?
Firstborn means, it says, among many brethren. In other words, you begin to be able to, just like Jesus was the Messiah was the firstborn for a lot of us, in a sense, because
It's like the
for
one
lack
who
of
carries
he,
the
for lack of he, it showed us, it gave us a model. I got you. It gave us, it showed us how we could be overcomers. Nick.
Yeah, and that's basically what I was going to say. Like the one who has the responsibility to the rest of them.
I see students study becoming teachers and disciples.
Okay.
So that first really isn't the first like we think it is.
Right.
Right.
Right. But in order to get to 29, we've got to understand and know 28. That's what it's saying.
mean for whom he foreknew?
From the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's what it means. That the one new is intimacy. Yada, intimacy.
Mm-hmm.
The one that he was intimate with from the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
Or it more deals more with recognizing the intimacy that's there because he already knew it.
But it's
But
not
suppose
talking
for-
about everybody? Or?
Well, yes. But my
Yeah.
question is this. This is my question. Suppose now it's very difficult to follow this in the New Testament because it uses the word Allah, God all the time, right? But in some instances where it uses God, it should be Yahweh or it should be Abum. So my question is, suppose that he's talking about whom he foreknew is saying, knowing yourself. Suppose you are the he who's supposed to be knowing yourself. You
So if I'm the who, I'm the he who's supposed to know myself, and I'm the he who also
all things work together.
predestinate.
Right. And it's, okay, and if we have to go back to beginning, right, for this to be predetermined, then suppose that is also saying that the predetermination of it is based upon us going back to beginning, being born again.
And that's what I think it is saying. It's saying that, you know, from the beginning, this is your destiny. From the beginning, your destiny was one with beginning. That's part of being conformed to the image, the picture, the likeness, of Messiah.
So let me ask again. He's talking about everybody.
Whoever,
Yeah, everybody.
whomever he did foreknow.
So we're all predestined to
Yes.
become
Yes,
in the image of Christ.
every single
If we
individual.
choose to
Exactly.
follow that path.
It's the free will part that every single individual, even the worst person that we can think of as the worst person, everybody has that divinity with them.
And that's mankind's responsibility to everything else in physical creation. So when we get ourselves right, and I know we talked about this in the year before, when we get ourselves right, then that flows out to everything else, because everything here wants to return back to where it came from, but it can't get there unless it goes through the agency of the consciousness that we are attempting to learn how to be.
And then you finally get to the verse. Okay, now that I know this, then I don't know how God is translated in verse 31. Let me see. If God before us, who can be? If God, what does it say? Yeah, who can be against us? If we know that we know this, if we are God and God are us, what can come against us? What circumstance? What experience? What can come against us? Well, lots of things can come, but what can? I think that against means what can overpower us? What can have victory over us? Nothing if we choose not to allow it to. Nothing.
It's like that. I forget the exact where it comes from, but like if somebody's about to be put to death for telling the truth, and they say, "But there's nothing else." Like there is nothing else but that, and that's the attitude and the reality of the situation that we're in. And by attitude, I mean the attitude that we are developing towards everything that we experience. Because there's literally nothing here that is designed to destroy us.
And that's what
And-
verse 35 is talking about, Rich, when it said, Nick, when it says that nothing can separate us from the love of God, there is nothing else.
Yeah.
Whether it's persecution, whether it's there is nothing else.
There is nothing else. All the stuff that we think that we think is something else is us detaching from our ego and kicking and screaming. And yeah, it's painful, but it's supposed to be, in a way.
So 828 is really an encouraging chapter once we buy into the fact that it's talking about us and that we are overcomers. And the issue is it's not just physical overcomers, it's spiritual overcomers.
Well, actually, we can never be a spiritual overcomer unless, a physical overcomer unless we are spiritual overcomers. Because what is it to overcome? in the
Right,
natural?
you're right.
Yeah.
Right.
And my mind got to be right.
And the truth is not the physical, the truth is the spiritual anyway.
Don't you say it?
You on a roll. Come get him, Sheldon.
No, he did that last week. I don't fool with him no more.
Any other comments? Again, the question is, do we really believe that all things work together? Everything. Some things.
I will take that with me today. At this moment, I will take that with me.
I hope that question comes up in you all week long.
I got your cell phone number. And I know where you live.
And I've been saying there's some things that you gotta do yourself. Some questions you gotta know yourself. You gotta
Right.
answer for yourself.
It's true.
Anything else today? Pastor, got any thing you want to say as a result of having been ministering somewhere else for a minute?
Yeah, I see how we are. There was a hyperlink between what we do regardless of what we're doing. Because if you really think back, if I think back to what transpired during the course of my time with in other places, it actually connects to what we were talking about today. But from a different perspective, because the thing that I was supposed to have been discussing was the African American journey, the historical and spiritual journey of the African American. And in doing so, it goes right back to the same thing. Knowing who you are. Realizing who we are. And once you realize who you are, you automatically know what your purpose is. We have all these material purposes. All these purposes that fulfill material desires and what we call needs. My purpose is to be an usher. My purpose is to be a deacon. My purpose is to feed the hungry. Now, if you take that and relate it to the reality of purpose, your purpose is to be an usher, but it's ushering in a new age, a fresh understanding. Your purpose is to be a deacon. A deacon is a servant. Your purpose is always to bring a greater awareness into the earth, and that's what we talked about. How anger and hatred and focusing on brutality and the middle passage and and the 50 million plus who were extracted from the shores of Africa and brought to this country. But when we look beyond that and see, okay, why did it happen? Instead of being upset with God, why did it happen? So that the world could be saved. And there's two other things. Then Sheldon, I defer to Sheldon. One is that when Obama said you didn't create this, talking about the businesses, right? They did, we did. And the other thing is that there have been questions from some people about why is it that with my approach to some things, I went through such efforts to raise a flag in my yard. It seems contradictory to some people in terms of, understanding. Well, this week helped me understand. There's a love-hate relationship with this country, with the African Americans. The love-hate, the hate part of it, and I don't mean literally, I mean figuratively, the hate part of it is in what happened to us as a people. But the love part of it is you don't create something and destroy it. You don't, Picasso does not throw his work onto a burning fire. You do everything to protect it. And that's the love relationship. We built this. When you see that the whole of the economic system of the world is based upon our 400 plus years of labor in Europe, Britain in particular, and this country. The whole Industrial Revolution was based upon the slave trade. There's no economic progress to the extent that we have seen it without the slave trade. You give me 400 years of free labor and I can move the world. You see, so that in itself help us to see the material reason for it. But the spiritual reason for it is different. You get past all of that and understand that doesn't matter. What matters is that humanity be preserved, that humanity be saved, that Adam becomes Elohim, that Adam recognizes the mistake that Adam has made. Does that make sense?
Yes.
That's the only thing that's important. The only thing. And I believe that if we don't see that to the extent of desiring to accept it without hesitation, then we have actually blown off all the pain and suffering that has taken place to get us to this point.
So that flows very easily into Romans 8:28. But something you just said just resonated with me. You don't throw something you create into the fire, and that's the love the Creator has for us, regardless of what we've done, regardless of how nasty we look, and we've debased ourselves. It doesn't throw us into the fire and say there's no hope. It doesn't do that.
And we can't get tired. I'm sorry.
You go ahead.
We can't get tired because I was talking to Ron. I was telling him that if you want to know the hope for mankind, look in the mirror. And he said, "Well, hope gets tired." And I said, "Okay, if hope gets tired and quits, then everything dies. So when you quit, then you die. And if all hope dies, there's no hope for mankind." And again, hope is not just some abstract concept. When you look in the mirror, that's who hope is. You are the hope for humanity.
But if I quit, I'm the one. Do I hold up progress, or I'm the one that dies?
But you never, just like
You know what?
You'll
Not
be back
me,
again.
period.
You'll be back again experiencing the same
you
thing.
don't live alone, so you don't die alone. You see? It's no such thing as no matter what I do to myself, I'm not hurting anyone. That's not true. That's not true. If we are one, then if you quit and you die, then an appendage of humanity has died.
Okay. Okay.
Okay, sure.
Sure.
Not really, but go ahead. Hi, Ranger.
He really is a gentleman.
Little Ranger. So, who we think we are determines our pursuit, and our pursuit determines what we see as good. Once we realize who we truly are, we will be able to accept everything working together for our good.
Okay.
That was real straightforward.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Didn't have to go anywhere to find out.
Salient and to the point.
Yeah. You're doing better for it, Nick. You're a good teacher. I also think that when we talk about the word God, we need to have a subconscious understanding of what it's actually saying, because God has no spiritual meaning whatsoever as it came into being. It came from the German word gut, which means good. So there are no spiritual connotations there. It was all based upon being good to somebody, as to being what the spiritual essence of who created us.
Yeah, it barely scratched the surface.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah, it
Indeed
barely
it does. Yeah, and you know, when people listen, they be like, "Where did you get that from?" Or, "I don't believe that." Or, "Well, that's not really church." Well, it's not intended to be. And we have to be willing to weather the storm or the brunt of the criticism in order to move forward, in order to move people forward, I should say. George has this thing he wrote, like, reaching back to bring others forward. And that clicked with me. Because if you reach back to bring others forward, then you're always pushing them in front of you to make sure, bring everything you see, you need to share it so others can see it, if that makes any sense, so that we can move to another place. So the depth of reverence that I have for a room far exceeds the depth of reverence that I had before I began to see, as I do now. Yeah. Now, I'm very cognizant of what I say in reference to the Father. I'm very cognizant of how I say it and the things that I do, as opposed to how it once was. I'm very cognizant of the contacts that I make in terms of intimacy, or be they distant or whatever. I'm very, very much aware of that. And because regardless of the contact you make, be it physical or be it spiritual, there is an essence that is exchanged. And the greater reverence you have for the one or the source of everything that is, then the more reverence you have for how you dispense that essence or share that essence. And you don't do it frivolously, and you don't do it for self-gratification. You don't do it for lustfulness. You don't do it because someone else desires it. You do it because it's right. Bottom line.
Well, with that being said, if that's all you have to say. Nick, anything else? Sheldon? Anybody else here? Well, I think that's a wrap for today, for this moment.
Yeah.